Making money from embroiling women in alleged illegal sex trade.
Are you taking advantage of young women, ma'am?
Police watched this accused brothel owner and her massage shop fronts for 2 months. With the help of Victoria Police's Sex Industry Coordination Unit, detectives raided her businesses in St Kilda and South Melbourne.
We've seized exhibits and we have arrested a 49-year-old female.
Police say most of her workers are on student visas.
I would suggest that is not the reason those young women were here.
Police say what you're doing here is illegal. Do you have anything to say about that?
Superintendent Philip Green says illegal brothels posing as massage parlours are booming across Melbourne. And worldwide, this is big business.
The money is significant, just as it is with illegal tobacco, just as it is with illegal drugs. Wherever there's money involved or there's potential to make money, you attract crime.
A lot of customers using these services pay cash, making it a lucrative means of laundering money. Police suspect many of these illegal businesses are linked to organised crime, including human trafficking. Evidence seized today will be used by investigators to look at whether that's happening here.
Within Australia and around the world, organised criminal groups who exploit existing human trafficking rings to provide workers for that black market industry.
Australian Border Force officials interviewed workers during the raids, finding one in breach of their visa.
Quite often we identify people who are scared and vulnerable and have been coerced into those roles.
In some cases, it works by promising women a visa for a better life in Australia. But upon arrival, they're forced to pay for it by working in illegal brothels.
They sleep in the premises, they eat in the premises. And again, that links very clearly into that strict control about where they go, what they do, who they see.
And for those using these services, aside from the health risks, police say this.
It's modern day slavery, Lexi. It's modern day slavery.
Alexis Daish, 9 News.
Gentlemen, I would like to take you through this video and analyse it from my perspective as a regular visitor to Pattaya, Thailand, and offer you my insights into what happened here. Let's start with 9 News and the reporter's opening line to the news segment. Making money from embroiling women in alleged illegal sex trade. Right from the get-go, the reporter gets to the bottom line. Here we have a situation where an Australian citizen, surprisingly, an Australian woman, is making money from embroiling women in an alleged illegal sex trade. Embroil, verb, to involve someone deeply in an argument, conflict, or difficult situation. Illegal, contrary to or forbidden by law, especially criminal law. Sex trade. If you Google that, it returns sex trafficking, which is defined as human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation, including sexual slavery. So right from the start of the report, the mainstream media and we, as this idiot, non-critically thinking audience of simpletons, has a negative connotation to making money from sex, making money from the sex trade, and we now associate making money from sex and the sex trade with illegal activities. Next out of the reporter's mouth is a question. Are you taking advantage of young women, ma'am? To take advantage, when Googled. To make use of for gain. To take advantage of an opportunity. To impose upon, especially unfairly, as by exploiting a weakness. To take advantage of someone. Young women. Note that phrase, and also note the phrase ma'am, which is a term of respectful or polite address used for a female stranger, presumed old enough to have children. So an older woman taking advantage of a younger woman. We hear the police watch the accused brothel owner and her massage shop for 2 months. 2 months. I can just imagine the police sitting outside in unmarked vehicles, watching the comings and goings, no pun intended, of the men as they ducked into the premises for a quick lunchtime massage, taking photos of them and gathering details of dates, times, customer profiles, etc., which is the job of the police, of course, after a crime is reported to them. I can just imagine the phone calls to the police station from concerned citizens, most likely concerned older women with low sexual market value. My God, an illegal brothel has opened up in my suburb. I demand you shut it down right now. Won't somebody please think of the children? Next we hear detectives had the help of the Victorian Police's Sex Industry Coordination Unit. I'm picturing in my mind an elite team of police dedicated to cracking down on unlicensed brothels and acting on criminal activity, which is exactly what they are apparently. The unit is staffed by one senior sergeant, one sergeant and two senior constables. 4 police officers. That's it. I pictured more for the state the size of Victoria, but I guess this elite squad sits up high and has their foot soldiers do the street policing work. The coordination unit is looking specifically for underage people in the sex industry, people who have been trafficked, unsafe sex practices, drug and alcohol on premises, and investigating unlicensed brothels. They don't wear uniforms. Undercover officers they are. So the police collected evidence for 2 months and then raided this woman's massage shops. Raid. Noun. A sudden assault or attack as upon something to be seized or suppressed. We hear from Senior Constable Stephanie Frost, who tells us police have arrested a 49-year-old female and they have seized exhibits. Just imagine what those exhibits must have been. I mean, they were taking them out in brown paper bags. Obviously, they must have been rather shocking. Maybe they found a dildo and other sex toys, perhaps condoms and lube. Yes, I know, gentlemen, I'm as shocked as you are. I'm just happy they took these items out in those brown paper bags in order to save members of the community from walking by and seeing such things. Then we hear that most of the accused workers are on student visas. Student visa, subclass 500. This visa allows a person to stay in Australia to study full-time in a recognised education institution. These visas have conditions on them for working. Basically, students are permitted to work a maximum of 40 hours per fortnight when their course is in session, and unlimited hours when their course is out of session. Permitted to work. Superintendent Philip Green then states, I would suggest that this is not the reason these young women were here. Well, of course not. The young women were here on student visas. The purpose of a student visa is for a person to come to Australia to study. The visa does not, however, specifically prohibit a person from working in the legal sex industry. We don't hear about that, however, in the report now, do we? No, we don't. The reporter then confronts the accused, who's wearing a towel to cover her face and hide her identity, and perhaps, yes, her shame of being identified as a pimp, with, police say what you're doing here is illegal. Do you have anything to say about that? We then hear that illegal brothels, posing as massage parlours, are booming across Melbourne. Booming. A sudden economic growth, especially one that results in a lot of money being made. A lot of money being made. Good God, no. How dare people respond to customer demand and create businesses that supply that demand? Not here. Not in socialist Australia. We can't have that now. We just can't. We then hear from Superintendent Green that the money is significant. Significant. He then mentions illegal tobacco and illegal drugs, and then talks about anywhere there is the potential to make money, you attract crime. Crime. So we as the audience are now thinking sex, illegal tobacco, illegal drugs, crime. Associating sex with crime. This is just too shocking, gentlemen, and that's coming from me, who some might allege have been exposed to and has engaged in some shocking sexual gymnastics in the land of smiles. We then hear from the reporter that customers pay cash, making these massage shops a lucrative means of laundering money. Laundering? The concealment of the origins of illegally obtained money by means of transfers involving foreign banks or legitimate businesses. Police suspect that many of these illegal businesses are linked to organised crime. Organised? A category of transnational or local groupings of highly centralised enterprises run by criminals who intend to engage in illegal activity for money or profit, with links to human trafficking. The police have seized evidence from the accused to see if that's happening here. Superintendent Green then goes on to talk about organised criminal groups involved in human trafficking. They exploit people to provide workers for the black market sex business. Black market? Black? An underground economy? A clandestine market? We then hear that Australian Border Force officials were there and interviewed the workers, finding one in breach of her visa. Commander Craig Palmer from the Australian Border Force then tells us that quite often they identify people who are scared and vulnerable and have been coerced into those roles. Quite often. The reporter then tells us that in some cases it works by promising women a visa for a better life in Australia, but upon arrival they're forced to pay for it by working in illegal brothels. Superintendent Green tells us the women sleep in the premises, eat in the premises, and are under control in terms of who they see, where they go, what they do, etc. The reporter tells us that the health risks, and Superintendent Green tells us it's modern-day slavery. Slavery, a system in which principles of property law are applied to people, allowing individuals to own, buy and sell other individuals as a de jure form of property. A slave is unable to withdraw unilaterally from such an arrangement and works without remuneration. Without remuneration. Where should I begin, gentlemen, with this report? Yeah, where should I begin? Brothels in Victoria are regulated under the Sex Work Act of 1994. This woman was running a massage shop, but it was providing sexual services illegally. Let's talk about that word illegal. It was illegal because it did not adhere to the provisions set out in the Sex Work Act of 1994, which sets out the legislation, e.g. laws or statutory law, the law of the land, the law of Victoria, Australia. From the look of the location of the massage shop, it was located in a busy, high-traffic area. It appears to be a commercially zoned area. Brothels in Victoria must be located in an area that is zoned industrial. So that's the first law she broke. She has 2 massage shops, and assuming both are located in commercial instead of industrial areas, then she has broken the law twice here. I would assume the second law she broke was one of her students working more hours than is permissible under the conditions of her student visa. The third law would be holding an interest in more than one brothel at a time. But I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that the woman has broken more laws specifically in regards to not having the correct prescribed brothel license, not paying the annual licensing fee, not registering to employ foreign workers, not paying superannuation, not having pay slips, not paying taxes on earnings. The list will go on and on. Did she register a company with ASIC? Register for the ASIC online portal? Register a business name as a subsidiary to trade under a company name? Register for an ABN? Open a bank account under a company name? Register with the Business Licensing Authority, Consumer Affairs Victoria, as a brothel? Provide Consumer Affairs, Department of Justice, with the details of her workers, names, date of births, passport numbers, ID cards, photos of passport, ID, etc. Did she register as an employer of a working holiday maker with the Australian Tax Office? Did she fill in the huge amount of paperwork after registering for an immigration account with the immigration department? Was she withholding 15% of every dollar her workers earn, up to $37,000? And did she provide said withheld money to the taxation department? Did she create pay slips for her workers? Provide those pay slips to her workers? Did she take her workers' earnings, withhold tax, then pay them direct to their bank accounts, leaving the appropriate money in paper trail? Did she provide the Department of Justice with an annual statement of her brothel business activities? Was she ensuring that her workers were providing safe sexual services to clients, that they did not work whilst infected with an STI, and made sure that they complied with a whole host of other requirements? Did she provide tax returns for her business and a group certificate for her workers at the end of each financial year? I suspect, I would bet money that she missed a few items on my list, gentlemen. The reason why these massage shops are popping up everywhere is because they can make a lot of money, but they make this money specifically by not adhering to the law. In particular, the money is made by avoiding paying the appropriate amount of tax, avoiding the large annual fee of $6,619.30 for owning a brothel in Victoria, avoiding the annual fee of $491.90 for renewing a brothel manager approval, annual second and subsequent room fees of $709.20. The list of fees goes on. I've provided a link to the fees in the description of this video. Let's bottom line this, shall we, gentlemen? This is about money. If the woman operated in accordance with the law, she would not have made as much money due to the large amount of fees and other charges she would have had to pay to operate a legal brothel business. The government, gentlemen, the ultimate middleman, or perhaps one might say standover man. Let's imagine the pretender was running a brothel here in Victoria, shall we? How would this have gone down? There wouldn't have been a story, because it would not be newsworthy. But let's create one anyway, and you tell me how newsworthy this story would be. Here we go. Making money from ladyboys in the legal sex trade. A reporter rushes up to a man calling himself Jared, known on YouTube as the Pretender Thailand. Mr. Pretender, can you tell me about this legal sex business you're operating? Sure. I have these premises here in this industrial zoned area of Brooklyn. It's located far from residential areas. I have only one premises, as I cannot by law own more than one. I have a number of Thai ladyboys that work for me in the business. Each of them are on working holiday visas. Each is allowed to work for the prescribed number of hours. I'm in regular contact with a number of Australian government agencies to ensure that I'm compliant with all applicable laws. These agencies include, but are not limited to, the Victorian Police, the Australian Border Force, the Australian Taxation Office, Consumer Affairs Victoria, the Department of Justice, the local council, and several other agencies that administer various laws. I pay a large annual fee and various other fees and charges to stay in business. Everything about the business is legal. To adhere to the law costs me a large amount of time, effort and money. This entire business is one of compliance. I'm under constant threat and scrutiny by members of the community who are watching for any little thing I might say or do that would put me in a position where they could report me to one of the authorities that I'm governed by. I find most of the troubles I've had in the past have been from the wives of married men who have been discovered by that their husbands have been utilising the services of my ladyboys. Usually what will happen is I will get a visit from a local council officer or a member of one of the government agencies I've mentioned. What I've set up is a comprehensive document management system where I can, at a moment's notice, provide the correct documentation and compliance documents upon request. My business differs from those so-called dodgy massage shops in that everything I do is legal. Those massage shops have an advantage over me because they operate illegally and they make more money than I do by not paying the fees, charges and taxes on earnings that the government has decreed must be paid. It's about money at the end of the day. I comply and they don't. None of my workers are victims of human trafficking. There is a perception in the community that human trafficking is rife in my industry. On the contrary, each of my ladyboys would have likely volunteered to be trafficked illegally if they were given that opportunity. Each was living in abject poverty in Thailand, living a very tough life. No money, little opportunity, rampant corruption, eating on the ground and sleeping in very poor conditions. My ladyboys do eat and sleep here on my premises, that is true. As you can see, I have a very nice setup here. The kitchen is great, and they love to cook. This setup is luxury in comparison to the conditions my ladyboys were used to living in back in Thailand. Despite having a beautiful kitchen table here, they prefer to eat on the ground. It's a Thai thing. You see it all over Thailand. Many of them do the same thing here in Australia. I don't understand it, but it's just the way they are. In Pattaya, I have a business associate who keeps his ears open for ladyboys that would like to come to Australia to work. The demand is very high, and both him and myself have had to constantly say no to the offers we've been made to bring ladyboys to Australia to work illegally. We explain that prostitution is legal in Victoria, but it is highly regulated. Far from taking advantage of the ladyboys, my business offers them opportunities they could only dream up back in Thailand. Several have lifted their entire families out of poverty due to working for me. Modern-day slavery, this is certainly not. My ladyboys make a very good wage working for me. Each of my workers is of legal age. No alcohol is permitted on the premises here. Here we do everything by the book, because we have to. If I don't, I'm out of business, and the government loses the appropriate fees, taxes and income I pay to them to operate the business. The ladyboys that work for me have the opportunity for an education as well. Some I bring over on student visas, which also allows them to work a set number of hours. Mostly they study English, but some are also in IT. Some study hairdressing as well. People have this perception, due to the media, that the sex business is associated with organised crime. We hear about that a lot in the media. Nothing could be further from the truth here. Essentially, what criminals do at the end of the day is make money by evading the law. We also make money, but we make less of it because we work legally. Working legally means partnering, essentially, with Australian government agencies. That's the way I see it. They're benefiting, and the Australian taxpayer is benefiting from the taxes I pay to operate legally. A story like this would never make the news. Can you imagine a reporter interviewing me? There's nothing newsworthy about the pretender running a legal business. I wouldn't even need a towel over my head to hide myself. The bottom line is the sex laws in Victoria need to be updated. It's expensive, time-consuming and difficult to comply with the law. The proliferation of illegal massage shops are simply an effect. They're not the cause. As Australian society becomes increasingly politically correct and feminism continues its cancerous effects, the demand for the services of young, beautiful Thai people among the many men considered not good enough by modern women increases. What needs to happen is the Sex Work Act should be updated and sex work should be recognised as a skilled occupation, and more sex workers should be coming over to Australia to work legally, to undercut the large degree of power that young Australian women have on their sexual services. We need more competition for them, both female and transgendered. The media also needs to stop with their bullshit, sensationalised stories and do some more in-depth research on the sex industry, comparing and contrasting the legal versus the illegal sex businesses and why things are the way that they are. My hope is that the accused in this story starts up again, but this time legally. It's the only way to do business here in Australia without running into trouble. There are simply too many ways to get into trouble, and all it takes is one phone call from one person. I found this out recently when I erected a temporary sign on my mother's house. It took less than 3 days before a council compliance officer was here, taking photos of the sign and making notes ready to find me. My cameras picked him up and alerted me right away, so I contacted council with the footage from the cameras, advising them the signage was temporary so I could take photos of the property for my LinkedIn and Facebook profiles for a business I'm running. We're talking about a sign here, remember? A neighbour almost certainly called the council. Now imagine the scrutiny I would be under with a brothel. Certain people get funny when it comes to sex. My view is don't give these people any ammunition. The brothel business is essentially all about compliance. By adhering to the law, we stay out of trouble. That's the bottom line. All the best, gentlemen. I'm the Pretender.